10 years of marriage. I once thought I had everything. A wonderful husband, Adrian Mercer, a powerful in-law family who always seemed to love me, and a dream career as the marketing director at Soul Empire, the fashion conglomerate my father had built with a lifetime of sweat and sacrifice. I lived that seemingly perfect life, until one Friday afternoon, when everything collapsed because of a single text message. I was leading a quarterly strategy meeting when the phone on the mahogany table buzzed softly. A message from Emma, my best friend since college. "Alice, where are you? It's urgent." I frowned, signaled my assistant to continue the presentation and quietly stepped out. I called Emma back. Her voice was tense on the line. "Emma, what's going on? Why do you sound so alarmed?" "Alice, please stay calm. Your husband Adrian, didn't he say he was on a business trip to Los Angeles?" My heart tightened. "What are you talking about?" "He called me this morning and said he'd arrived safely." "No, Alice," Emma said, her voice breaking. "My cousin works for an airline. She just sent me a picture. Adrian's at JFK Airport, checking in for a flight to Miami. And he's not alone. He's with his entire family, his parents, his sister and her husband, and a young woman who's heavily pregnant." A ringing filled my ears as I forced myself to stay calm. "He's with who?" "With everyone, Alice. They looked so happy. Your mother-in-law was even stroking the pregnant woman's belly." Every word from Emma felt like a knife to my chest. Miami. A pregnant woman. The whole Mercer family. The scattered pieces suddenly formed a picture of ruthless betrayal. I hung up. My hand clenched around the phone until my knuckles turned white. I walked back into the meeting room, keeping my face expressionless. "This meeting is over. I want the detailed report sent to my email before 9 a.m. tomorrow. You may all." My voice didn't tremble. The team looked surprised, but no one dared to ask. As the door closed, I grabbed my car keys and headed straight to the parking garage. I had to go. I had to see it with my own eyes. No matter how cruel the truth was, I had to face it. The car sped through the crowded streets of Manhattan, but inside me there was only a dead silence. What had I done wrong in these 10 years? I had given everything to his family, treated his parents as my own. After my father died, they became my only support. I had built Soul Empire alongside Adrian, working tirelessly so he could be proud of his wife. We never had children, my greatest sorrow, but Adrian always comforted me, saying it didn't matter. Now I understood. He hadn't said that because he didn't care, but because he'd already found someone else to give him a child. The airport was packed. I put on a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a mask, then blended into the crowd. I saw them at the business class gate, the Mercer family, glowing in their little circle of joy. Adrian, the man who used to sleep beside me every night, had his hand protectively on the shoulder of a young woman, her belly round and full. My mother-in-law, who once held my hand and told me to take care of myself, was gently handing that woman a glass of milk. My father-in-law chatted happily with his daughter's family. A perfect, cheerful family, and I was the outsider. I stood at a distance, silently watching the way Adrian looked at her, eyes full of love, tenderness, and hope. He leaned close to whisper something, and she laughed, resting her head sweetly on his shoulder. That sight didn't make me scream. It turned my heart to stone. The betrayal of one person hurts, but this was the betrayal of everyone I loved and trusted most. They had staged a perfect play, and I was the fool who never saw it. They weren't going on vacation, they were heading to a private clinic in Florida to keep the birth quiet and away from New York eyes. A carefully planned scheme. I didn't confront them or cause a scene. I quietly took out my phone and snapped several clear pictures, enough to show every face, my first pieces of evidence. When they passed through security, I turned away. Not a single tear fell, but something inside me had died completely. 10 years of love, trust, and respect reduced to ashes right there at that airport. As I stepped out the main doors, I inhaled the freezing night air. I knew the Alice Coleman from yesterday no longer existed. From now on, there would be another Alice, one who would reclaim everything that belonged to her and her father, no matter the cost. I drove back to our mansion in the Upper East Side. The vast house that once felt like home now seemed cold and hollow. The faint scent of lilies, my favorite, lingered in the air, but it only made it harder to breathe. From the giant wedding photo in The living room to Adrian's slippers by the door. Everything was proof of one enormous lie. I refused to be weak. I went straight to the study on the second floor, where my father used to keep his most important belongings. Opening the safe, I found besides a few pieces of jewelry all the property deeds, contracts, and, most importantly, my father's will and my ownership certificates for Sol Empire. During his lifetime, my father had always told me to be strong, to know how to protect myself. Perhaps he had sensed something, because he had arranged everything carefully. The majority of the company's shares were in my name. Adrian only held a small portion, just enough to keep his board seat. My father once said it was both a wedding gift and a lifelong shield. Now I finally understood what he meant. I gathered every important document, placed them neatly into a leather case, then sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, and made the first call. I called Mr. Attorney Raymond Scott, the lawyer my father had trusted the most, and so did I. He picked up almost instantly, his voice warm and calm. "Alice, it's Raymond. What's the matter? Why are you calling so late?" I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Mr. Raymond, I need your help. It's something very serious and urgent." Hearing the tone in my voice, he immediately grew serious. "All right, tell me." "I'm listening. I want you to prepare divorce papers. And I suspect my husband, Adrian Mercer, has been embezzling funds from Sol Empire and committing tax fraud. I need your help to investigate and gather evidence." There was a few seconds of silence. He must have been shocked. He had witnessed our wedding himself. "Alice, what happened? Are you sure this isn't some misunderstanding?" "There's no misunderstanding," I replied, my voice cold as steel. "He's with another woman and she's about to have his child. My entire in-law family knows and helped send her to the U.S. to give birth. I saw them at the airport this afternoon." Mr. Raymond sighed heavily. "I understand. What a night. Leave everything to me. First, don't let them know you've found out. Act as if nothing happened. I'll contact a specialist in Florida to collect the necessary evidence. As for the financial matters, do you have any specific suspicions?" "I believe he's been transferring money through shell companies using his position as vice president, or disguising it as donations, especially through the Future Light Foundation, the one named after my father. I need the full transaction history of that foundation for the past 3 years." "Understood. I'll start right away. You're the majority shareholder and the founder's daughter. You have every right to request that information. Stay strong, Alice. Don't fall apart. Your father's loyal partners and I will always stand by you." When the call ended, I felt a little stronger. I wasn't alone in this fight. Immediately, I began to act. Using my administrator access to the company's server, I secretly backed up all of Adrian's emails, work chat logs, and related files from the past 3 years. I also checked the security camera systems at both the office and our home, recording every moment Adrian made secret phone calls or left work under suspicious excuses. Everything was carefully documented. Night fell and the mansion sank into silence. I sat alone in the vast living room, the light from the laptop screen reflected on my numb face. The pain still smoldered in my chest, but it could no longer destroy me. It had turned into a flame of anger and determination. On Monday morning, I met with Attorney Raymond at his office. When he saw me, he couldn't hide his fatigue and worry. He poured me a cup of chamomile tea and said softly, "Alice, I know this is extremely difficult, but you must be strong. I've reviewed the preliminary financial reports for the fund you mentioned. Over the past 3 years they've spent a huge sum under the name of supporting young talent and study abroad scholarships. And the sole beneficiary is a person named Clara Dawson." Does that name ring a bell? Clara Dawson. My heart clenched. I remembered the young woman's face at the airport, beautiful but with a challenging look in her eyes. "Maybe it's her, Mr. Raymond." He nodded, his expression hardening. "I thought so too. I've contacted the person I mentioned, Ethan Blake, a very skilled and discreet private investigator who handles cases involving Americans abroad. He took the case and has already started working. We'll have news soon." I didn't have to wait long. Just 2 days later, I received an encrypted email from Ethan Blake via Attorney Raymond. It contained a compressed file full of photos and a brief report. My hands trembled as I opened each photo. The first was a luxurious villa in a quiet Miami neighborhood. Parked in front was a white sports car, the exact model Adrian used to call his dream car. The second, Adrian and Clara pushing a shopping cart in a supermarket, looking like a newlywed couple building a home. Clara rested her head on his shoulder while Adrian placed his hand on her full belly, tenderly. The next pictures were even crueler, the Mercer family happily dining in the villa's garden. My mother-in-law lovingly served food to Clara, my father-in-law laughed heartily. My brothers-in-law were there too, chatting familiarly with their new sister-in-law. A real family while I was only an outsider. There was even video of Adrian escorting Clara for walks in the park, holding hands, stopping occasionally to kiss. Their happy scenes made me nauseous. But the part of the report that made my skin crawl was the end. Miller had traced rental contracts, the car's purchase papers, and records at a high-end international obstetrics clinic, all in the names of Adrian and Clara. And most importantly, he traced the first transfer of money from Adrian to Clara starting 3 years ago. 3 years. Not a momentary lapse, not a newly budding affair, but a systematic plan of betrayal that had lasted a third of our marriage. During those 3 years, while I worked myself to exhaustion at Soul Empire, while I lay awake longing for a child, my husband was quietly building another family behind my back. During those 3 years, while I believed my in-laws were my only support, they were covering for their son's crimes and eagerly awaiting a grandchild that was not mine. All their care and gentle words were just cheap theater. I shut the laptop and leaned back in the chair. The luxurious study suddenly felt stifling. I didn't cry, tears were now a useless luxury. The pain had turned into another emotion, cold and sharper: determination. The evidence was in my hands, undeniable. It would not only be the weapon to end this marriage but also a daily reminder of their cruelty. They had stolen 10 years of my youth, trust, and love. Now I would take back everything that belonged to me and everything they owed my father. A few days later, while I buried myself in work to forget the pain, the landline rang. It was a video call from my mother-in-law. Seeing her smiling face on the screen made my stomach clench, but I quickly regained my composure. I inhaled deeply and put on a radiant smile. "Hello, Mother. It's Alice. How is everyone?" "Of course, my daughter. The air here is very fresh. I just wanted to check on you. Don't overwork yourself while you're home alone. You look a little pale." I pretended to touch my cheek. "Yes, it's busy at the end of the year so I'm a bit tired, but don't worry, I'm eating well." She sighed and looked at me with pity in her eyes. "My dear, work is important, but family is more important. You've been married 10 years, it's time to think about having a baby. Your father and I can't wait to hold a grandchild. Why don't you take a few days off and come here for a change of scenery? Maybe you'll have good news." I wanted to laugh. Who was she performing for? She knew perfectly well I no longer needed to try. The grandchild she longed for was growing in another woman's belly, in the house where she currently lived. That feigned concern was just an excuse to rationalize the arrival of the soon-to-be-born baby. A perfect play. I forced a sad smile. "Yes, Mother, I hope so too. Maybe it's not the right time yet. When this project is finished, I'll come by for a checkup." Just then, my father-in-law appeared in the frame, waving cheerfully. "Alice, it's your father. Adrian is working hard on his trip. Remember to take care of yourself, don't overdo it." "Yes, Father, I'm fine. You two take care as well." Another blatant lie on a business. Their whole family, from old to young, were master actors. Together they covered up the crime. Together they trampled on my feelings and trust. They thought I was a fool, easily lulled by sweet words. When the call ended, the smile vanished from my lips immediately. I stood and walked to the window, looking at the busy traffic below. Their deceit disgusted me. For 10 years I'd lived among wolves in sheep's clothing, pretending to love and protect while secretly preparing to tear me apart. While my hatred for my in-law family hadn't yet cooled, another dagger pierced my heart, sharper and crueler, forged from my father's own legacy. That morning, Attorney Raymond called me to the office. His face had never been so grave. He placed a thick file on the table. "Alice, sit down. Prepare yourself for what you're about to see." He opened the file and pointed to the detailed expense sheet of the Future Light Foundation. As we suspected, Adrian Mercer has been transferring money to a woman named Clara Dawson, hiding it as scholarships. But the real scale is far worse, not just a few $100,000 but millions of dollars broken into smaller amounts and transferred steadily over the past 3 years. Millions of dollars. I felt my heart constrict. This foundation used to be my father's labor of love. He created it to help poor children get an education, to bring the light of knowledge to deprived places. Yet Adrian, the son-in-law my father had trusted most, had turned it into a personal ATM to support his mistress. With my father's sweat and tears, with donations from so many people, with funds that should have built schools and bought books, he bought her a villa and a luxury car. How despicable. I couldn't contain my anger. Attorney Raymond placed a hand on my shoulder and said gently, "Calm down. Anger won't solve anything. We need a cool head." Then he slid another stack of papers toward me. "This morning Adrian's secretary sent this to your office, saying it needed a signature urgently to complete the year-end audit. Look." I took it. The cover read politely, "Confirmation of transactions for financial audit." Inside were terms that seemed ordinary, confirming investments and transactions for the fiscal year. A routine annual procedure, nothing suspicious at first glance. "Did I miss something, Mr. Raymond?" I asked. He flipped to the last page and pointed to a tiny line in the appendix. "Here, Appendix Clause 7 HDCNS. Do you recognize it?" I squinted and my heart stopped. It was the contract code my father had drafted specifically for me. The tiny print read, "The undersigned, in the process of restructuring and expanding Soul Empire's investments, agrees to unconditionally transfer 20% of their shares to Mr. Adrian Mercer." So this was his real purpose. He didn't just want money, he wanted to swallow Soul Empire, my father's legacy. He used my habits and my trust to lay a trap, making me sign away my own destruction. If I hadn't been cautious today, if I had signed like I always did, it would have been over. A chill ran down my spine. "What a diabolical plan," Attorney Raymond said softly, with contempt in his eyes. "He treated you like a child who could be led by the nose. He planned it carefully. With this 20% plus his existing shares and shares he bought from others, he'd have enough to kick you off the board." I stared at the paper. Hate boiled inside me, then an idea flashed. He wanted to set a trap. Fine. I would turn that trap into his grave. I looked up and met Attorney Raymond's eyes, my voice unnaturally calm. "Mr. Raymond, we'll use it. I will sign this contract." His eyes widened. "Are you out of your mind, Alice? If you sign, you'll lose everything." I smiled coldly. "I will sign, but not now. I'll say I need time to review it, to buy time. Meanwhile, we'll prepare another contract identical in form but with content that's the exact opposite. If he wants to play with words, I'll play with him. If he wants to deceive me, I'll make him fall into his own trap." Attorney Raymond saw the resolve in my eyes. From surprise he moved to agreement and nodded firmly. "All right. We'll do it your way." It's time that fox fell into his own snare. In the following days I threw myself into work like a madwoman. By day I remained the cool, competent marketing director running all the year-end campaigns smoothly. By night, Attorney Raymond, his team, and I dissected every financial report, tracing each dirty dollar Adrian had embezzled. The pressure of work, the pain of betrayal, and the weight of my revenge plan made me lose weight rapidly. The dull stomach pain I'd felt at first soon turned sharp, stabbing like a knife. I thought it was just stress and irregular meals, so I took a few antacid pills and kept working. But that Wednesday morning, during a board meeting just as I was presenting our international market expansion plan, a sudden pain cut through my stomach like a blade. My vision went dark. I tried to hold on to the edge of the table, but my legs gave out. My secretary's panicked scream echoed, followed by the crash of a chair. Then everything went blank. When I woke up, the distinct smell of disinfectant filled my nose. I was lying on a white hospital bed, an IV needle in my hand. Emma, my best friend, sat beside me, her eyes red. When she saw me open my eyes, she grabbed my hand tightly. "Alice, are you okay? You scared me to death." "I'm fine," I whispered, my throat dry. An older doctor with a kind face walked in, his eyes full of empathy. "Excuse me, I need to speak privately with the patient," he told Emma. Reluctantly, she left the room. Miss Coleman, he said, sitting down, his tone calm and steady. I'm Dr. Matthew Carter, head of gastroenterology. We ran some tests and did an endoscopy. The results show a mass in your stomach. I froze. A mass? Doctor, is it serious? He sighed. We've sent the biopsy sample, but based on the images and my experience, it's very likely early-stage stomach cancer. It's very similar to your father's case, Mr. Coleman. He was my patient. Stomach cancer. The same disease that had taken my father 5 years ago. History was repeating itself cruelly, almost unbelievably. The shock was too much, and tears I had held back for so long finally fell. I was strong, yes, but when facing the fragility of life, I was just a weak woman. Doctor Carter patiently waited for me to calm down. Alice, I understand this is a major shock, but medicine has advanced greatly. We caught it early, so the chances of full recovery are very high. We'll schedule surgery to remove the tumor as soon as possible, followed by chemotherapy to eliminate any our remaining cells. You must trust us and stay positive. I wiped my tears and looked out the window. The sky was still blue, the sun still shining. Life went on. I couldn't die. Not yet. Not while those who destroyed me and my father still walked free. This shock wouldn't break me, it would make me stronger. It gave me both a reason and a deadline to finish everything. I looked Dr. Carter straight in the eye, my gaze steady. Thank you, doctor. I'll have the surgery. But please give me 2 weeks. I have something very important I must complete first. He hesitated, then nodded. All right. 2 weeks. But after that you must be admitted immediately, not even a day late. I promise. When he left, I closed my eyes. A new plan, riskier, more urgent, was already forming in my mind. 2 weeks. That was all the time I had to finish everything. Now, revenge wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine, it was a battle for survival, a wager between life and death, where losing wasn't an option. Lying in the hospital bed, I listened to Emma peeling apples while scolding me for neglecting my health. I stayed silent, replaying every step of the next move in my mind. Suddenly, the tablet on the bedside table lit up a video call from Adrian. My heart tightened. I motioned for Emma to stay quiet, took a deep breath, fixed my hair, and forced a weak smile as I answered. Adrian's face appeared, filled with concern, but now I knew, behind that mask was nothing but deceit and calculation. Sweetheart, are you okay? I heard you fainted at the office. I was so worried. What did the doctor say? Is it serious? He asked anxiously. I coughed lightly, placing a hand on my chest, playing the frail patient. Don't worry, Adrian. It's just low blood pressure from overwork. A few days of rest and I'll be fine. I couldn't let him know about the tumor. I didn't need his pity, and more importantly, it would ruin the plan. I had to keep believing I was still the naive, easily manipulated wife he thought I was. Adrian exhaled in relief, his acting flawless. Thank God, you scared me half to death. Please take care of yourself, work can wait, your health comes first. I feel terrible being so far away and not there to look after you. Those sweet words made my stomach twist. If he truly felt terrible, he wouldn't be across the country with another woman and their unborn child. After a few more fake words of concern, his tone turned serious. Listen, honey, I know you're tired, but it's urgent. Have you looked at the documents my secretary sent? The partners here are pushing hard. If we delay, we'll lose a huge investment opportunity. It's very important for the company and for our future. The fox finally showed his claws. I feigned a frown, my voice weak. I think I saw them. But I've been so dizzy these days I couldn't read anything carefully. I'll look again. Once I'm discharged. Just seeing words makes my head spin right now. A flicker of impatience crossed Adrian's face, but he quickly masked it, continuing in a gentle, persuasive tone. I know you're tired, but please do it for me. You only need to sign the last page. I've reviewed all the other clauses, everything's fine. It's for our future, okay? For our future. Once those words might have made me happy. Now, they just made me sick. In that future he spoke of, there was clearly no place for me. All right, I'll look again, I replied, adding a hint of reproach. I'm sick in bed and you're still making me deal with company stuff. You really don't care about me at all. Don't say that, sweetheart. You're the most important thing to me, he said quickly. How about I ask Mom to come take care of you for a few days? He even dared to mention his mother. Their performance was perfect, disgustingly in sync. I shook my head. No need. Emma's here with me. Your mother's been traveling enough, let her rest. After a few meaningless reminders, the call ended. As soon as the screen went dark, the smile vanished from my lips. I was exhausted not from illness but from pretending to be the foolish wife for so long. Adrian was getting impatient, a good sign. The fish had taken the bait. I'd let him wait a little longer. The more anxious he became, the more mistakes he'd make. While I was recovering at home, Emma practically moved in to take care of me. She worried about my mental state even more than my physical health. I had lost noticeable weight, my face pale, but my eyes were always sharp and calculating. Emma looked at me with pain in her eyes. One afternoon, she sat beside me, her tone serious. Alice, I know you have a plan and I support you. But are you really planning to handle everything alone? Don't you need more help? I have attorney Raymond. Emma shook her head gently. He's handling the legal part. But what about everything else? Have you considered that the Mercer family might use the media to smear you? They have money and connections, they could easily turn the victim into the villain. Her words hit me like a splash of cold water. She was right, I hadn't considered the battlefield of public opinion. While gathering evidence and protecting assets, I had forgotten one crucial front, the public. Emma continued. I have a cousin who's an investigative journalist, David Miller. He's sharp, honest, and absolutely hates hypocrites. I think he can help you. Want me to introduce you? I nodded without hesitation. That was the missing piece of my plan. We arranged to meet David at a small cafe tucked in a quiet alley in Brooklyn. He was younger than I expected, tall, lean, with black-rimmed glasses and sharp eyes. I told him everything short, direct, emotionless. David stayed silent for a long time, then said, Miss Coleman, if what you're saying is true, this isn't just a family scandal, it's a major financial crime case, embezzling charity funds, setting up shell companies, and transferring capital abroad. With charges like these, your husband could face years in prison. I know, I replied calmly. And I have the evidence. I handed him a USB drive. Inside is part of the data I've collected. I need you to dig deeper, trace the shell companies Adrian created and track the money flows abroad. And most importantly, be ready. On the appointed day, I want everything to explode across every media outlet at once. I don't want him or his family to have any way to deny it. David took it, his eyes lighting up with professional excitement. Don't worry. I love stories like this. Justice needs to be served. I'll start right away. We'll keep in touch through Emma. With David's help, I felt like a tiger that had grown wings. But I knew that to destroy the Mercer family completely, I had to attack what they cherished most, their reputation as a model family. And I had found their fatal weakness. Through my father's old connections, attorney Raymond uncovered a shocking secret. Before marrying my mother-in-law, Arthur Mercer, Adrian's father, had a deep love affair with a woman named Aurora Vance. He abandoned her while she was pregnant to marry my mother-in-law, who came from a more powerful background. The baby didn't survive. For decades, Mrs. Vance had lived quietly, alone, in an old apartment. I decided to visit her. That day, a light drizzle fell. I found the old building where she lived, tucked in a quiet residential area on the outskirts of Miami. The woman who opened the door had silver hair and a face marked by time, but her eyes were still bright and clear. She looked at me suspiciously. Hello, I'm Alice Coleman, the daughter-in-law of Arthur Mercer. At that name, her expression changed. She was about to shut the door, but I stopped her just in time. Please, wait. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm also a victim of that family. I just want to seek justice for myself. And perhaps for you too. Maybe it was the sincerity in my eyes that swayed her. She opened the door and invited me inside. The apartment was small but clean and tidy, carrying the simple grace of someone who had lived alone for too long. I told her my story while she sat silently, occasionally wiping tears from her wrinkled cheeks. When I finished, She opened an old wooden box and took out a bundle of yellowed letters and several black and white photographs. "These are all he left me," she said hoarsely. "Promises of forever, words about a happy future. In the end, all that remained was abandonment and pain. Take them. If they can expose who he really was, then all my lonely years will have been worth it." I bowed in gratitude, carefully took the relics, and left. Outside, the rain had stopped. In my hands were Arthur Mercer's love letters, and I knew I had gained another weapon. I wouldn't just bury Adrian. I would tear off the hypocritical mask his family had worn for decades. The next day, Dr. Carter called. The biopsy results were ready. I drove to the hospital alone, feeling strangely calm. When he confirmed the initial diagnosis, early-stage stomach cancer, I simply nodded. The clock had started ticking 14 days. That night, I told Emma. I couldn't keep it from her any longer. Sitting in the quiet living room, I handed her the report. She stared at it, then burst into tears. "No way. Alice, they must be wrong. You have to get surgery right away. Forget the company, forget him, your life matters most." I held her hand tightly. "Emma, listen to me. I will have the surgery, I promised the doctor. But not yet." "Why?" she nearly shouted. "You're gambling with your life." "That's exactly why," I said, meeting her gaze firmly. "Emma, Soul Empire isn't just an asset, it's my father's life's work. I can't let it fall into the hands of a traitor, a man who used my father's charity money to fund his mistress. If something happens to me during surgery, Adrian as my legal husband will inherit part of my estate. He'll use it to keep control of the company. If that happens, I'll never rest in peace. I'd rather die than let my father's life's work be stained by a man like him." Emma was speechless. She looked at me and, for the first time, saw the fire of a warrior in my eyes, not blind hatred, but responsibility. "I only have 2 weeks," I said softly. "In those 2 weeks, I have to finish everything. I have to make Adrian come back, lure him into signing the papers that strip him of every right. Only after securing my shares can I enter that operating room in peace. Whatever happens, at least I'll have fulfilled my duty as a daughter." Emma threw her arms around me, crying and trembling. I patted her shoulder gently. I knew she cared deeply, but this was a game only I could play. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, I sat alone in my father's study. I opened a drawer and took out an old photograph of him, his gentle smile, his warm eyes. I brushed my fingers across his face. "Dad, trust me. I won't let you down. I'll protect Soul Empire and everything you built, even if it costs my life." The first step, and the most crucial one, was to protect my father's shares. If Adrian gained control of them, nothing else would matter. The next morning, I arranged a secret meeting with attorney Raymond, not at the company or his office, but at an old villa in a resort area outside Connecticut, one of my father's former properties. Only 3 people were invited: Mr. James Porter, the plant director who had worked with my father since the beginning; Mrs. Linda Hayes, the finance director, known for her integrity and caution; Mr. Thomas Reed, the logistics director, loyal and upright. They weren't just major shareholders, they had watched me grow up. When they arrived, all of them looked worried, thinking I had called them because of my health. I personally poured the tea, then went straight to the point. "Ladies and gentlemen, I asked you here today because this concerns the survival of Soul Empire." I placed on the table the undeniable evidence: photos of Adrian and his mistress in Miami, bank statements showing millions of dollars embezzled, and finally, the falsified audit report with the appendix demanding I transfer 20% of my shares to him. When they saw the documents laid out, their faces shifted from worry to shock, then to fury. Mr. Porter, the hot-tempered one, slammed his hand on the table. "Unbelievable. Chairman Coleman trusted him so much he even gave him his only daughter, and this is what that awful man does. A man like that doesn't deserve to stay in Soul Empire another day." Mrs. Hayes, calmer but icy-eyed, said, "This is a plan both clever and cruel. He must have prepared for years. If you hadn't discovered it in time, Alice, Soul Empire would already be his." I waited for their anger to subside, then went straight to the heart of it. "I know Adrian Mercer won't give up his scheme. I'll soon have to be absent for medical treatment, and during that time, I can't allow what my father built to be threatened. So, though this is a risky request, I have no choice. I need your help. I paused, looking each of them in the eye. I want to temporarily entrust 30% of my Soul Empire shares to the three of you, under the legal supervision of Attorney Raymond, through a fully binding trust agreement. That way, my shares will no longer be Adrian's target and, more importantly, the core control of the corporation will rest in the hands of those most loyal to my father. It room went silent. They all understood the gravity of it. Accepting such a large portion of shares wasn't just an honor, it was a heavy, risky responsibility. At that moment, Attorney Raymond spoke up, explaining the legal terms of the contract in detail, ensuring everything was transparent and safe for both sides. After a long silence, Mr. Reed, the quietest of them, spoke first. I remember Chairman Coleman once said, Soul Empire was his life, and Alice was his heart. Now both his life and his heart are under threat. We owe him too much. There's no reason to stand by and watch. Mr. Porter and Mrs. Hayes both nodded. Agreed. We accept. Alice, focus on your recovery. We'll handle everything. We'll make sure Adrian Mercer doesn't touch a single brick of Soul Empire. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. I stood up and bowed deeply. Thank you, all of you. I'll never forget your loyalty. The trust agreement was signed on the spot. When I held the paper bearing their signatures, I felt the enormous weight on my shoulders finally lift. The first solid wall protecting my father's legacy had been built. Now I could safely move on to the next phase, setting the setup and waiting for the prey to fall into it. With Soul Empire's defenses secured, I began weaving the net. Time was running out. I had to act quickly, precisely, and without error. My performance of the fake bankruptcy officially began. First, I made myself look frail and exhausted. In truth, I didn't need to pretend. Illness, sleepless nights, and pressure had already carved deep lines into my face. I stopped wearing makeup and chose loose, dark clothes to hide my thin frame. Each time I arrived at the company, I walked slowly, my eyes sunken, my gaze distant. The strong, confident director everyone once admired had vanished, replaced by a woman who looked defeated and hopeless. Then I started spreading rumors subtly, without drawing attention. Just a few, casual words to the right people at the right time. During a lunch with a few talkative business partners, I sighed and mentioned that an export deal to Europe had fallen through, severely affecting the company's cash flow. I said in a weary tone that I was looking for funding everywhere but things weren't going well. That was all it took. Rumors of Soul Empire's financial crisis spread like wildfire. To make it more believable, under Mrs. Hayes' supervision, I instructed the finance department to delay a few small payments to secondary suppliers. Of course, Mrs. Hayes met them privately, explained the situation, and reassured them their money was safe, but to outsiders, it was clear evidence that Soul Empire was running out of cash. The final move was listing the mansion for sale. I contacted the city's top real estate agency and asked them to list our marital home for nearly 30% below market value, emphasizing that I needed to sell it quickly within 2 weeks to resolve the company's financial problems. The news that the late Chairman Coleman's daughter was selling her home to save her father's legacy spread fast through high society and real estate circles. Everyone believed it. At the company, employees began whispering, the atmosphere heavy. Some started job hunting, competitors gloated. And I, at the center of the storm, kept a sorrowful face in public, though inside I was calm. The bait was laid, the net was set. Now I just had to wait for the greediest fish to swim straight in. Each passing day, the pain in my stomach reminded me that time was running short, and I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the news of the mansion sale broke, I got a late-night call from my mother-in-law. I let it ring for a while before answering, feigning a tired, sleepy voice. Hello, who is this? It's me. What on earth are you doing? People are saying you're selling the house, and for that. Cheap? Are you insane? Her voice was sharp as a knife, panicked. I pretended to sob. I'm sorry, Mother. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything. Explain yourself. Is the company really that bad? And I began my performance. Between sobs, I said, the European deal was cancelled, the partners demanding compensation, the banks calling in the loans. I don't know what else to do, Mother. I've ruined my father's legacy. If I don't sell the house, I can't even pay the employees. Maybe I'll have to declare bankruptcy. I knew I had struck her greatest fear: losing money, losing the house, losing her lifeline called Soul Empire. Bankruptcy? No. Don't do anything rash. I'll call Adrian. He needs to come back right now. He has to save the company. She hung up immediately. I set the phone down, wiped away my fake tears, and smiled coldly. Everything was easier than I expected. Their greed and stupidity were my best allies. As predicted, less than an hour later, Adrian called, his tone mixed worry and reproach. Alice, what are you doing? How could you let the company get to this point? I've told you so many times, if something happens, you have to tell me. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to worry. I thought I could handle it myself. All right. Stop crying. He cut me off, his voice urgent. Don't do anything stupid. Don't sell the house and don't sign any papers. Do you hear me? I'm flying back right now. I've already bought the ticket. I'll be there by the morning after tomorrow. I'll take care of everything. You just wait. Really, Adrian? You'll really come back? I asked, my voice trembling with false hope. Of course. I'll help you. Don't worry about a thing. That flight, he didn't know it yet, was his one-way ticket to the end. Welcome home, my dear husband. I had already prepared the perfect death sentence for you. 2 days later, on a cold late autumn morning, Adrian returned. I went to the airport to meet him, wearing a loose gray dress, no makeup, my face pale and tired. Adrian came out looking weary from the flight, but the arrogance of a savior was written all over him. He looked me up and down with a mix of pity and disdain. You look awful. You can't even take care of yourself. Instead of greeting me, he began with criticism. I lowered my head, the picture of a weak, helpless wife. I don't know what to do anymore. On the drive home, he kept pressing me about the company's situation. I carefully described the fake crisis, each loss and risk crafted to sound logical and convincing. The more he listened, the more smug he became, lecturing me, analyzing my mistakes, and, of course, praising himself. See? Leave for 1 week and everything falls apart. Just hand everything over to me. From now on, do exactly what I say, got it? As soon as we walked into the house, he tossed his coat on the chair and said sharply, All right, tell me exactly how much we owe. Is there any way to raise capital? It was time to play my final card. I took the thick folder Attorney Raymond had prepared and placed it on the table. Take a look, I said, my voice weary. I've tried everything. There's an investment fund willing to lend us a large sum to help the company through the crisis, but the terms are strict. They require you, as vice president, to be the guarantor and assume personal responsibility. Adrian immediately opened the folder. Dozens of pages, meticulously drafted, filled with complex legal and financial jargon that Raymond had intentionally inserted to confuse him: debt restructuring, guarantee agreements, asset mortgage contracts. He skimmed through the first pages where the loan terms looked completely reasonable without paying attention to the fine print in the appendix. What exactly do they want? He asked, eyes still on the papers. Collateral, I replied, forcing my voice to tremble with despair. All our joint assets: the mansion, the cars, the savings accounts, everything. And to prove management capability, they require you to sign a declaration taking full responsibility for the debt. In the worst case, you'd voluntarily forfeit control of those assets to prioritize repayment. I spoke slowly, voice shaking as if on the verge of tears. They said it's just a standard procedure to secure the investment. Adrian frowned, thinking it over. Greed and blind confidence clouded his judgment. All he could see was the enormous amount of money and the chance to save Soul Empire and with it, gain total control. He thought the company could easily recover with that money and that the mortgage terms were trivial. And above all, he believed I, the weak wife in his eyes, would never dare to act against him. Fine, he said firmly after a few minutes. If it saves the company, just sign it. We'll make it all back later. Hand me the pen. My hand trembled as I gave him the fountain pen my father had once gifted me. I watched as he confidently signed his name on each page of the contracts, agreements, and declarations. His bold, proud signature was his own death warrant. His greed and stupidity were now sealed in black ink on white paper. As he set the pen down, I held my breath. It was done. The trap had closed. "All right," he said, leaning back smugly. "Now that I'm here, you can rest." I nodded faintly, gathering the documents. The paper was still warm from his touch, sending a shiver down my spine. He thought he had just signed his ticket to ultimate power, but in truth, it was his descent into ruin. A week after Adrian's return, I was admitted to the hospital. The surgery was scheduled for Monday morning. In the final 10 days of this life and death gamble, I spent every moment with attorney Raymond, journalist David Miller, and my father's loyal associates, perfecting every last detail of the plan. That morning, the New York sky was gray, drizzling with light rain. Emma drove me to the hospital early. As I changed into the hospital gown, I felt an unexpected calm, as if the burden I had carried for so long was finally about to be lifted. I took Emma's hand and whispered, "Emma, if anything happens to me, please take care of the Future Light Foundation. Don't let it be exploited again." "Don't say that," Emma snapped, her eyes red. "You'll be fine. The surgery will go perfectly. I'll be waiting outside." "I know." I smiled. "But before I go in, you need to send a message." I handed her attorney Raymond's number with only one word to text: "Start." As the nurse wheeled me toward the operating room, I saw Adrian standing at the end of the hallway. He was probably there to continue his act as the devoted husband. He held my hand, looking worried. "Stay strong, sweetheart. I'll take care of everything out here. You just rest." "All right. I'm leaving it all to you." The operating room doors closed. The surgical lights were blinding. The smell of anesthesia filled the air. As my consciousness faded into darkness, I knew that outside, the storm had begun. At that same moment, in his office, Mr. Raymond received Emma's message. Calmly, he made 2 phone calls. "File the suit," he told the legal team waiting at the courthouse. "Publish it," he told David Miller. Immediately, the wheels of justice and the media began to turn. At the Manhattan District Court, divorce and criminal charges were filed. Adrian Mercer was accused of fraud, embezzlement, mismanagement, and adultery. Attached were all the evidence, photos and videos from Miami, bank statements, and the deadliest blow of all, the debt restructuring contract he himself had signed. Meanwhile, at Soul Empire's headquarters, Adrian sat smugly in the chairman's chair, thinking he was the new king. He was about to call an emergency meeting to announce the restructuring and seize full control. But just then, the doors burst open, and police officers entered. "Mr. Adrian Mercer," the inspector said sternly, "we need you to come with us for questioning regarding a criminal complaint filed by your wife, Mrs. Alice Coleman. Please cooperate." Adrian froze, his face draining of color. "What? There must be some mistake." No one answered. At that very moment, his phone began to ring nonstop. On the screen, headlines from major news outlets flashed. Vice President of Soul Empire accused of adultery and embezzling millions of dollars. Below were sharp images of him and Clara Dawson in Miami, along with investigative reports exposing a chain of shell companies, money laundering, and the dirty past of his father, Arthur Mercer. A media storm erupted. His and his family's bank accounts were frozen. A travel ban was issued. Everything collapsed in a single morning. Adrian roared like a beast, sweeping everything off the desk. He understood now. This was a perfect trap crafted by the very woman he had once underestimated, and while he drowned in chaos, I on the operating table was fighting for my life. The red light above the surgery room stayed on, the battle continued. Outside, the world of those who betrayed me was burning. And it was only the beginning. I woke up from a long sleep. The smell of antiseptic still lingered, but it no longer suffocated me. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, sparkling on dust motes in the air. The incision ached faintly, but my mind was clear and light. Emma had fallen asleep beside me, still holding my hand. Dr. Matthew Carter walked in with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Coleman. You truly are a strong woman." The surgery was a complete success. We removed the entire tumor, and the surrounding lymph nodes are clean. "You've won a crucial battle." A hot tear rolled down my cheek, not from pain but from relief. I had won the fight to reclaim my own life. When I recovered, the outside world had turned upside down. The storm I had unleashed had swept the Mercer family away. Every day, Emma brought me updates, her voice full of satisfaction. "Hey Alice, guess what? That bastard's been detained. They say he's been screaming like a lunatic at the station. But it's useless. Raymond's evidence is airtight, he's not getting out of this. His parents are begging everyone for help, but no one dares. The whole country knows. With this kind of media firestorm, who would risk getting involved?" That was exactly what I wanted for them to feel, the same isolation they once made me endure. Emma continued. "All their assets have been frozen: houses, land, shares, accounts, everything. Their mansion, that palace they loved so much, has been sealed off. Adrian's sister-in-law ran back to their parents' homes, crying their eyes out, and I heard their families are forcing them to file for divorce to avoid being dragged down. What a bunch of hypocrites. Yesterday they were acting like queens, today they're the first to run. Their downfall happened faster than I expected. The family that once prided itself on wealth and prestige had become a national laughingstock. My father-in-law, Arthur Mercer, suffered a hypertensive episode and was rushed to the hospital after reading the articles exposing his affair and the love letters he'd written to Aurora Vance. My mother-in-law completely broke down, locked herself inside the house, refusing to see anyone. Lying in my hospital bed, I looked out the window. The trees outside had started shedding their leaves, signaling the arrival of winter. But for me, a new spring was beginning. It wasn't gloating, it was peace. Everything had returned to its rightful place. Karma might come late, but it never forgets. A month after the surgery, the divorce and asset division trial began. Though I hadn't fully recovered, I decided to attend. I wanted to see Adrian's downfall with my own eyes. That morning, Emma picked out a simple white dress for me and did my makeup lightly so I wouldn't look too pale. I refused the wheelchair, choosing instead to walk slowly, holding on to Emma and attorney Raymond. The image of a woman who had just survived illness yet still stood tall in the face of adversity instantly drew hundreds of cameras outside the courthouse. Flashbulbs went off nonstop, but I wasn't rattled. I held my head high, eyes forward, calm and composed. The courtroom was packed and tense. Then Adrian entered. He was unrecognizable, his hair disheveled, stubble rough across his face, eyes bloodshot, his once arrogant expression now hollow. The man who had once looked down on me was now just a shell of himself. When he saw me, his eyes flared with hatred. If not for the two guards beside him, he might have lunged at me right there. The hearing began. Attorney Raymond, steady and commanding, presented each piece of evidence in turn. On the large screen appeared photos of Adrian and Clara happily together in Miami, bank records of fraudulent transfers, and finally, the debt restructuring contract bearing Adrian's unmistakable signature. The more he saw, the more twisted his face became with rage and fear. He tried to claim he'd been framed, that I'd set him up, but his own signature made every word meaningless. Adrian's lawyer, a young man his family had hired in desperation, offered a pathetic defense, that I, out of jealousy and infertility, had plotted to ruin my husband. But within minutes, Raymond's firm rebuttals shattered that argument completely. "Your Honor," his voice rang out, "my client, Mrs. Alice Coleman, was not only deprived of the joy of motherhood but for 3 years, she lived under the deceit of her husband and his entire family. And while she was fighting stomach cancer, the very illness that took her father's life, the defendant, Adrian Mercer, was happily expecting a child with his mistress overseas. Tell me, is there any justification for cruelty of that magnitude?" All eyes turned to me, full of sympathy. I lowered my head slightly, shoulders trembling just enough, a perfect image of both fragility and strength. When the session ended, the court granted all my requests. All disputed assets were frozen until the final ruling. The mansion and other joint properties were temporarily placed under my management. As I left the courthouse with Raymond and Emma, Adrian lost control. He broke free from the guards, pointed at me, and screamed, "Alice Coleman, you'll regret this. You crazy woman. You think you've won? You'll see." His madness, his face twisted with rage, was captured by hundreds of cameras. I gave him a cold, almost pitying look. He had lost. miserably, and didn't even realize that his own foolish outburst had just delivered the final blow to his image and dignity. While the media storm raged across America, Raymond regularly received reports from private investigators about my mother-in-law and Adrian's mistress, Clara. I read those reports with the same detachment I would reserve for a financial statement. When news of Adrian's arrest and the freezing of all his assets reached Miami, the first to react was the luxury maternity clinic where Clara had planned to give birth. Her dream of delivering like a queen vanished instantly. No one paid the hospital bills, and the clinic promptly demanded that they leave. Amid the chaos, Clara went into premature labor. The baby was born weak and had to be placed in an incubator. But a private hospital is no charity. After emergency care, they ordered her discharge and transferred the infant to a cheaper public hospital. Ethan Blake sent me clear photos. My mother-in-law, the woman who once lived in luxury, now helping her son's mistress, who had just given birth prematurely. Both women clutched worn-out suitcases, leaving the hospital in utter disgrace. Their faces showed no pride, only exhaustion, shame, and despair. The rented mansion's landlord had already evicted them for non-payment. The two women, one old, one young, and the frail newborn, ended up in a cheap, moldy motel. The luxurious life was over. A new hell had begun. With no money and no help, tensions exploded. In one audio recording Morales obtained, my mother-in-law shrieked, "This is all your fault, you terrible woman. If you hadn't seduced my son, if it weren't for that belly of yours, my family wouldn't have fallen apart. You ruined his life, do you hear me?" Exhausted after giving birth, Clara dropped the act of being gentle. "Oh, really? Why don't you blame your son, the greedy, stupid one? Did I force him to cheat? Did I make him embezzle? When he handed out money, when your whole family lived lavishly off it, you didn't seem ashamed then. Now that it's all gone, you blame me and this baby?" They screamed, insulted, even hit each other, blaming one another for everything, from the baby's cries to the instant noodles they ate every day. Clara's dream of a better life had turned to smoke, leaving her with a sickly child and a bleak future. My mother-in-law had lost everything: her son, her wealth, her reputation, and even the grandchild she had sacrificed everything for. Now, that baby was her final burden in misery. I looked at the photos Morales sent, two women huddled in a damp, shabby room, and felt not a shred of pity. It was the price they had to pay. They had sown the wind, and now they were reaping the storm together. 6 months later, Adrian's criminal case concluded. During that time, I focused on chemotherapy. My hair fell out, I lost weight, but my spirit never faltered. With the help of my loyal team, I gradually returned to work and stabilized Soul Empire after the chaos. On the day of the sentencing, I didn't go to court. I simply watched the news with Emma. The court sentenced Adrian Mercer to 8 years in prison for fraud, embezzlement, and mismanagement. In the civil case, the court approved the divorce. All assets tied to Soul Empire were awarded to me. Adrian was left with nothing. On the screen, he stood motionless as the verdict was read, a hollow shell of a man. As the police escorted him out, Arthur Mercer cried out, "Adrian, my son." He broke through the security line, trying to reach him. In his panic, he turned toward the TV cameras and shouted, "Alice Coleman, are you satisfied now? You think you've won? Did your father die in peace? Adrian was just a pawn, you used him." I froze, staring at the screen. Emma quickly turned off the TV. "Don't listen to him. He's lost his mind." But his words echoed in my head. Did your father die in peace? Why did he say that? My father had died of stomach cancer. The hospital's diagnosis had been clear. So why, in his desperation, did Arthur mention my father's death? Faded memories resurfaced. I remembered how, in my father's final days, his illness had progressed faster than expected, shocking everyone. Back then, Adrian had played the role of the perfect son-in-law. He prepared medicine, cooked soups, and said they were special remedies from a renowned doctor. I'd been grateful, even touched. But now something felt wrong. I recalled one time when my father drank the lotus seed soup Adrian made and suffered severe stomach pain afterward. When I asked, Adrian said it was because my father's body was too weak. I also remembered one afternoon when my father took my hand, his tired eyes trying to tell me something about Adrian and the company, but then he stopped. I had ignored it. Now those fragments, pieced together into a terrifying realization. What if my father hadn't died from illness? What if someone had intervened? And that someone was the man my father had once loved and trusted most. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the moment I discovered Adrian's betrayal or my own cancer. If it were true, Adrian's crimes weren't just betrayal and theft, they were murder. I shot up, my eyes sharp as blades. Emma, call Attorney Raymond right now. Tell him to come immediately. We need to reopen my father's case. I had thought my war was over, but it turned out there was still one final act left, more brutal than all the rest. I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. A year passed, enough for my scars to fade and my heart to start healing. My hair grew back, shorter, styled in a bold bob, the mark of a new Alice. I regained my weight and strength. Dr. Carter said, "It's a miracle. Your will to live saved you." After Adrian's imprisonment, my story became national news. A woman betrayed, battling illness and conspiracy while protecting her father's legacy, became an inspiration for thousands. At first, I refused all interview requests. But I realized my story could help other women, those still suffering in silence as I once had. I agreed to appear on a renowned talk show. Live on air, I didn't speak of pain or hatred, I spoke about the journey of reclaiming life and self-worth. I talked about the importance of financial independence, of clarity in love, and of the courage to defend oneself. My calm demeanor, logical words, and extraordinary resilience captivated the audience. I was no longer the poor woman from a family scandal, but a symbol of strength and rebirth. Fame didn't change me, it gave me direction, a new mission. I decided to dedicate a large portion of my wealth to create the Future Light Foundation, a fund supporting women entrepreneurs. The foundation would not only provide financing, but also legal aid, psychological counseling, and business mentorship, helping women trapped in broken marriages rebuild independent lives. On the foundation's opening day, I stepped onto the stage and looked down at hundreds of women's faces, their eyes filled with hope. At that moment, I understood. This was the sweetest revenge, to turn pain into strength and use it to uplift others. After a year of relentless work, I decided to give myself a true vacation. I chose Paris, the city my father had loved deeply. I hoped that walking the same streets he once walked, breathing the same air he once cherished, my soul would finally find peace. One afternoon, under the honeyed light along the Seine, I wandered into a small second-hand bookstore tucked in a narrow alley. The scent of old paper and time warmed my heart. As I flipped through a leather-bound book on Renaissance art, a deep, gentle male voice spoke beside me. "Excuse me, you're American, right?" I looked up and froze. The man before me had a familiar, intelligent, calm face. He seemed just as stunned to see me. Alice Coleman, Daniel Hartman. The name slipped from my lips instinctively. Daniel Hartman, my brilliant college friend, the one my father had greatly admired. After graduation, he'd earned a full scholarship to France. It had been over 10 years since we'd last met. The unexpected reunion filled us both with warmth. We had coffee at a nearby cafe. Daniel was now a successful architect in Paris. He told me about his work, his life still single, still with that same warm smile. I shared with him the turbulent story of my life. He listened quietly, eyes full of compassion and respect. "You're incredibly strong, Alice. Mr. Coleman must be proud of you wherever he is." At the mention of my father, sorrow welled up. I instinctively pulled a small herbal notebook from my purse, the one my father always carried. As I flipped through the yellowed pages, I found a small folded note tucked inside something I didn't remember ever placing there. Curious, I opened it. It was my father's handwriting. On it were names of several herbs with their effects noted beside them. But at the bottom, he had circled 2 unfamiliar herbs, marked a big question, and scribbled a line beneath: "Adrian's soup. Ask Dr. Miro." My heart nearly stopped. Dr. Robert Myron, my father's close friend, a specialist in traditional medicine. Then I remembered, those 2 herbs, harmless on their own, could, when combined with ingredients in the lotus seed soup Adrian often made, damage the stomach lining, worsen cancer, and even neutralize treatment effects. I trembled as I handed the note to Daniel. "Look." He read carefully, his brow furrowing in realization. "This Dr. Miro, do you know where he is?" I'm not sure. But Attorney Raymond can find him. Daniel placed his hand over mine, his gaze. I have friends in the European pharmaceutical field. They can analyze this formula for toxicity. Don't worry, Alice, you're not alone anymore. We'll find the truth together. I looked at him, feeling a warmth I hadn't known in years blossom in my chest. We left the cafe, walking side by side under the golden sunset along the Seine. Two silhouettes stretched across the cobblestone path. The investigation into my father's death had found new light. And more importantly, I had found someone I could trust to walk beside me. I don't know what the future will bring, but I know one thing for certain. A new chapter, radiant and full of hope, has truly begun in my life. Some wounds may seem like an ending, but they're really the start of a new journey. I once thought revenge was the final destination, but in truth, real victory is rising from the ruins, living a meaningful, kinder life, and turning pain into strength to help others. My story isn't just about betrayal or loss. It's a reminder that no one can take away our true worth unless we surrender it ourselves. No matter how deep the scars, everyone can be reborn, stronger, brighter, and freer than ever. And have you ever had to rise from brokenness? Have you found your own way to turn pain into purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below, so we can grow stronger together through each story. And if you want to keep hearing journeys of courage, resilience, and forgiveness, stay with this channel. Who knows? The next story might be the one you need to believe in tomorrow again.